So, hello everybody, this is Bhante Joe here, and I'm just here at the Kuti and thought to record a short Dhamma discussion for the internet. So I thought that could start with a little meditation, so you can lean forward a bit and arch the spine, and look about 3 feet in front, and close our eyes. And can focus in on the breath, can know when it's coming in, and know when it's going out. If one breathes in a long breath, can just know, I'm breathing in a long breath. And if one breathes in a short breath, can just know, I'm breathing in a short breath. And can let one's awareness expand until it fills one's whole body. And one of the similes that it gives in the canon for spreading feelings throughout the body is like a lake with an underground source. And the water comes up from the underground source and fills the whole lake. And in a similar way, one can spread awareness throughout the entire body, trying to be aware of the whole body as one breathes in, the whole body as one breathes out. And when practicing whole body breathing, can be good if one can change one's perceptions a bit. So instead of thinking of the breath as air that comes in and out of the lungs, one can think of it more as energy that courses through the body and is all around. And with this perception in mind, one can perceive almost as if one is breathing in and out of every pore in one's body. Almost like the body was a big sponge. So on the in-breath, one can think whole body. On the out-breath, one can think whole body. And before we finish meditating, can spread thoughts of goodwill, wishing may all beings all around everywhere be happy and at ease. may they put in place the causes necessary to be happy and at ease. And we can make the mind infinite, can make it unbounded, all the way to the ends of the universe and beyond. In every dimension, may all beings all around everywhere be happy and at ease. And can open our eyes and do a short Dhamma discussion for the internet. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi, Dhammaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi, Sanghaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi. Titiyampi Buddhaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi, Titiyampi Dhammaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi, Titiyampi Sanghaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi. Tatiyampi Buddhaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi, Tatiyampi Dhammaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi, Tatiyampi Sanghaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi. So, hope that everybody is having a great day wherever it might be. And here we've got the beginning of the rainy season happening, which is why there's a bit of wind, or some wind, a fair bit of wind today. And so was asked a question a little while ago: how does one dissolve away past memories and perceptions to overcome habitual responses? And so overcoming habitual responses is something that one is basing most of one's practice on, kind of overcoming past habitual responses. And so memories and perceptions, both these things can influence one's habitual responses. Typically for modern people, as far as memories go, in terms of they can have both a positive and a negative influence. If a memory is one where one is basically recollecting one's generosity, recollecting one's virtue, recollecting the devas, these kind of things, kind of recollecting, I've done these good deeds. As a result of those good deeds, one may have this intuitive feeling that I could be reborn in this deva realm. I've done the same deeds that these devas have done. In which case, this type of memory or recollection is something that's positive. Oftentimes in the West, one will have memories. If a memory leads to something negative, it's usually a memory about something one used to have and then has lost, or it's a memory about something bad that one's done, that one has a certain amount of kind of remorse over. Both of these things lead to negative outcomes, negative kind of mental outcomes, in the sense that if one is thinking about something that one had, that one's lost, one becomes sad in the present moment. And as a result of this sadness, one can't focus the mind on doing things that are positive right now. And it's a similar thing if one thinks back to bad things that one's done in the past and feels a sense of remorse or grief over things that one can no longer change, because this prevents the mind from being happy in the present moment, and it prevents the mind from doing positive things in the present moment, basically moving forward in a positive direction. So in terms of dissolving the past perceptions or past memories based on grief or based on kind of remorse, one of the ways to do this is basically, first of all, that one needs to have the right view that grief or remorse, this kind of beating oneself up, is a bad thing. It's kind of not a positive quality. Oftentimes, especially in the West, growing up, there's kind of a background attitude that like remorse or grief is a good thing. Kind of one feels really bad about doing something or having done something, then one won't repeat it. And so it's often something one cultivates to kind of hit oneself with a stick a little bit, kind of, so don't do that again, kind of this attitude. And the Buddha's recommendation is basically that one has a sense of what they call hiri-ottappa, or this sense of shame and feeling of wrongdoing. But this is basically something that one applies if one does something bad, if one slips up, if one doesn't keep the precepts, then one has a sense of shame. It's kind of this, I'm not, it's basically a feeling that this type of action is more or less beneath one's standards. It's something one feels like ashamed of doing. And a fear of wrongdoing is a fear of the consequences. And in terms of the amount of remorse that's considered that may be useful, it's basically just the amount that gets one to notice that the action is bad, so that one can set one's mind on doing something good in the future. So this is what the Buddha recommends, is that basically if one does something bad, one thinks that wasn't good that I did that. But in the future, I won't do it anymore. And then after that, one learns to practice to abandon the past memory, to abandon it when it comes up, to not let it arise. If it arises, to see it as a negative thing, to see it as a defilement, and to return to doing positive things in the present moment. And he recommends that one learn to spread metta, or loving kindness, to all beings. So it's in this way that one learns to train one's mind not to go back to past actions that one's done to cultivate a sense of grief. Basically, the amount of thinking that one needs to do about the bad things that one has done in the past is not that much, really. It's basically just to the extent that one knows that one shouldn't do it again. And so after thinking that once, one can let it go. As far as letting go of the memories that involve like grief or loss, like there was a loved one in one's life that one doesn't have right now, or previously one was really, powerful or wealthy or attractive, and one now feels that one has lost those qualities. If that's the case, the way to overcome these things, number one, is basically to, some of the ways is basically to cultivate this perception of impermanence. Kind of that these things, one changes the way one perceives these things, like, oh, I was this person in the past, I had these things in the past, maybe I'm not really that type of person. Maybe I'm really this type of person who doesn't have these things, who can't accomplish things, or who people don't like, or who doesn't have this loved one. This is a kind of perception or pain that arises when one has this perception that these things belong to one, that one's accomplishments belong to one, that they're a representation of some innate quality that one has, that's who one really is, or that people belong to one, relatives belong to one, that these people are my possessions, they're things that belong to me. As a result, one puts one's weight on these things and tries to cultivate a sense of safety in having them, in keeping them. And when they go, that's when it becomes very painful. So at the beginning, the solution to these things is basically to cultivate the perception that they're not mine, that this is proof of the Buddha's teaching, that in the past, I had this thing, now I don't. It's proof of the Buddha's teaching that all phenomena are impermanent, that I'll become separated from everything that I love. And therefore, it's not mine. It's not something that belongs to me. Grasping onto it creates suffering. When one cultivates this perception over and over again, it's not just something that one does to let go of the past, it's something that one does to let go of things as they touch the mind in the present as well. So, because in the past one cultivated this strong attachment to these things, in the present, when they're not there, one suffers. So reaching back to the past, one can use this perception to cultivate, these things aren't mine. It's not something that's possible for me to grieve or for me to grab onto. But it's not enough. One actually has to do that in the present as well. When things that one finds really agreeable, really pleasing come to one, one cultivates this perception this isn't mine. I don't own this. So to the extent that this has come into my life, I'm going to use it to cultivate the Dhamma. I'm going to use it to try to move forward to Nibbana. In this way, one doesn't grieve so much when that thing goes. But actually, even then, one wants to take that even further and try to stop the habit of creating a refuge in external things, and instead looking for a safer refuge, basically refuge in the Dhamma, refuge in practicing the Dhamma, refuge in trying to realize the Dhamma, because this is something that's very difficult for other people to take away. And if one realizes the Dhamma fully, nothing can take that away. But if one has, say, for example, more and more of a refuge in doing good deeds, then what can take, it's very difficult for other people to stop one from doing that. If one has more and more of a refuge in keeping sila, it's very difficult for other people to stop one from doing that. If one has more and more of a refuge in concentration and meditation, and basically this just requires the mental ability to focus. And so it's very difficult, much more difficult for one to lose these things as the body ages, as one's abilities fall away, or if one's loved ones pass away. So it's in cultivating this alternative refuge to the external refuge that one may really start to gain another ability not to suffer if these things change. And in terms of replacing past habits or past things that one did in the past, kind of things that one used to do constantly, kind of ways of thinking, modes of perceiving, modes of remembering, one of the things that can be very helpful for this is if one learns to train one's mind to stay in the present moment. Kind of if one learns to be in the present moment. Just kind of if one is walking, one just walks. If one is sitting, one just sits. And to have this anchor or this yoke, usually is a kind of a kammatthana object, a meditation object like the breath or like metta that one is basically doing throughout the day. That can help to anchor one's mind in the present moment. Because sometimes these patterns of thinking, patterns of memory, they're basically reinforced when one goes back, when one sends one's mind to relive them. And so if one learns to stay in the present moment, if one learns to be in the present moment, then of course one still needs to do thinking sometimes, but basically this habit in and of itself helps weaken this kind of vicious cycle where one is thinking about something and reacting to it, thinking about something and reacting to it. Of course, it's not the only thing one needs to do, but it can be very helpful. It's one aspect of cultivating Dhamma practice. So those are a few things that can help with cultivating, with overcoming past memories, past perceptions, and past habits. Is basically past memories and past perceptions, learning to cultivate the counters. And to develop this kind of inner refuge in the Dhamma, so that if things that one loves fall away, one still has a refuge. And something that can help, not the only thing, in terms of eliminating past bad habits or past habitual modes of thinking, is if one learns to train one's mind to be in the present moment. And this, of course, is also a habitual mode of thinking. But if one's mind is in the present moment, then if one trains one's mind to be in the present moment in this way, then it weakens this vicious cycle of thinking about a past memory, thinking about something that one had in the past and reacting to it, of contacting an external stimulus and then reacting to it. Somebody says something insulting about one's country, one gets angry. If one is in the present moment, it's kind of like this kind of contact is like if one were to throw a pitcher were to throw a fastball at one at 100 miles an hour. It's very little chance to dodge. But if a little kid kind of throws a softball underhand, it kind of comes very slowly, one can dodge that more easily. And so in a similar way, if one learns to cultivate this habit of staying in the present moment, then the external stimulus, the contact, seems to come more slowly. One has more time to choose an appropriate reaction, to choose a path that goes against that habitual mental response. Okay, so leave that for reflection, and hope that everybody has a great day wherever it might be, and wishing all the blessings of Dhamma practice.